Okay, so I could not leave that little crappy game. My conscience just, it didn't feel right. So I decided that I would go and actually make a proper game, or at least something that could at least approximate something with challenge. So this is my version of a lunar landing simulator. There's a bunch of instruments here, and this will be my fuel, this will be my altitude, this will be my vertical speed, this will be red and green lights showing whether I'm going too fast or too slow, and this button will fire the engine. So if I simulate it, you see we start falling downwards, the velocity turns red, and I should fire my engine to slow down. As I fire my engine, note that the velocity decreases, and I am now going to try and put it down on the surface with a vertical speed of less than 10, and I get a green light, and victory is mine with 24% of my fuel remaining. So how does all this work? Well, it's a lot of different little sub-modules handling different things. I guess the first place to start here is the engine computer. So the engine computer consists of, they have the button which enters into this module. First thing it does is it checks to see if the accumulator is greater than -100, because if it is less than that, it means you've run out of fuel. So I don't set fuel to 100, I start the fuel at 0 by default and then decrement it. Now for display, we send this fuel value over here and it normalizes it by adding 100 and then forwards that onto this display. Then we actually read the input from this. So if the fuel is greater than -100, we actually check the engine light or check the engine switch, and we subtract from our fuel status, and then we forward the engine data into the velocity computer. So the velocity computer, it will read in the engine input. If your engines are firing, it adds 1 to your velocity. If they're not, it subtracts 1. We don't have any floating point math here, so it's very, very simplistic. So yeah, we move the value from the accumulator out onto this to send it forward to the actual game. I don't know, the game cycle here. I don't know what to call this. The other thing we do is we actually read in from this to the state to say, are we sitting on the ground or not? Because once we sit on the ground, we stop running this cycle, which is kind of important. Okay, so it initializes everything by setting our altitude to 999. Every run loop, we take the value from x2, store it in data, and then we move the value from data onto this. You see, we need this extra thing because we had to multiplex the x2 value. We had to send a couple of different places. I didn't have the lines. I couldn't quite make everything connect the way I wanted, so I connected through this for real estate reasons. It'd be really nice if I had more space, because then I could add more lines. So the next thing, obviously, we do is we add the value of the velocity to our altitude, and obviously our velocity is usually negative, which means we are going downwards. If the value of our velocity is 0, then it usually is because we've skipped through and reached the end state, but otherwise, when we get if our altitude is, if our altitude is greater than 0, fine, we skip through. Otherwise, if our altitude has reached 0, we move 0 into here, and that basically freezes us in the end game state. Also, we echo our altitude out here. So last but not least, we send our velocity through here, and this is the velocity warning light computer. It reads in the velocity, and if our velocity is below -10, then we illuminate the red light. If it's above -10, then we illuminate the green light. And because the velocity continues to be echoed after the game cycle is over, you'll get a green or a red light at the end, showing you whether you've succeeded or not. So yeah, I can just let this thing fall to the ground, or rather I can perhaps do a suicide burn around now, and then let's see if we do it. Oh, just about did it. Yes. Very gentle touchdown there. Okay, I was going to crash there. Let's simulate that again. Reset it, simulate. In this case, so we're just going to let it go a little higher. wait for 31. 31! Let's try to slow down in time. Oh, and crashed into the ground, so I get a red light, which is a failure. You can also run out of fuel, so I simulate I can just fire my engines and watch them, you know, burn or whatever. My altitude, of course, gets stuck at 999 because the registers won't go any higher than that, but once I burn out of fuel, clicking the button no longer stops my vertical speed because we can't send that forward on the bus. You see, pushing this doesn't send it along the bus. Our fuel remains 0, and now we start falling towards the ground, and soon enough, we will collide. We will have failed. So yeah, that is a complete game. I wanted to have some extra lights, like a fuel out warning light. I couldn't quite fit it in. I think I need to do some other adjustments. There's also a more complicated screen here, which I might look into, but that's actually the game that I came up with for Shenzhen IO. I keep saying Shenzhen when it's really Shenzhen. I'm a terrible, terrible Chinese speaker. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.